Yes, hello, I am James Rowlands and it's latest WNR361. To be fair, it's nice to get some alone time. We're on the cusp of Hell in a Cell, where I will be joined by Jaxie and Select Match Pod. But first, with myself here, let's catch up with our Raw review and Smackdown summary. So we're going to go right back, because we had WrestleMania Backlash, which we reviewed here on the WNR podcast. We picked right off on the May 17th Raw, and we start with Lashley flopping his bout about for the ladies, and they seem to be enjoying it. MVP is over the moon. We get an open challenge later, no Braun or Drew, and it's AJ Styles versus Elias next. I guess Styles and Omos are now baby faces. This wasn't a bad match, but why have it so long if it ends in a DQ? Omos was too slow to stop Jobber Inc. attacking AJ. And then we see Riddle trying to make Orton apologise to New Day, but instead a match is booked between Kofi and Orton. And then Lily and Alexa interview Tamina and Natalia in a playground. And can we just stop listening? The whole 24 title was belts won when it comes to accomplishments with wrestlers as well. It is not a true title. I mean, a four-time champ Gulak and four-time champ Elias would actually mean something. And talking about that, we get Drew Gulak versus Garza next. This was a squash, a wing clipper, and we get more Rose stuffing. Not Mandy, of course. Next match is Kofi versus Randy Orton. We see Woods distracted Orton with his trombone, so Kingston could roll him up for the surprise win. Riddle kept Orton from attacking Kingston after the match, but he also shoved Woods before leaving. This wasn't bad. It was kind of over too quickly. I mean, New Day are the saviours for Monday. And then Italian versus Nia Jax and Shayna Baszler. We see Alexa Bliss appearing on the stage and set off some flames that blinded Reginald. Distraction allowed Natalia and Tamina to score the win. I mean, come on now. Let's have an end game for Bliss. We then see Sheamus come to the ring looking heated. He grabbed a mic and demanded Ricochet return the hat and coat he stole from him. Backstage revealed Ricochet did indeed steal his hat and coat from the locker room. Sheamus eventually hit the bro kick for the pin to end a great match between the two. And then we get Charlotte versus Asuka. We're getting two great matches back-to-back on Raw. What? Ricochet versus Sheamus, and then Charlotte versus Asuka. What? They traded control several times for Ripley. Ended up taking a big boot from Charlotte on the apron. Asuka was able to get the win with a roll-up. I mean, it's a shame they don't treat Asuka like a proper star. I mean, it could be like Austin Rock, but instead it's like Cena Punk with Asuka always looking in. They've got wicked chemistry, though. And how many roll-up finishes in WWE? I mean, take a shot every time you see that. We then see Damian Priest facing John Morrison in a lumberjack match, but instead of zombies, it was WWE superstars around the ring. Nikki Cross was the only woman in the crowd. Cedric Alexander went after Shelton Benjamin as chaos started to break out. The Archer Infamy superplexed Morrison onto all the lumberjacks at ringside. Priest hit his finisher for the pin and the win, while the lumberjacks continued to fight. I mean, you have to admire WWE for not just ignoring it. Harry Morrison make reference to feeling empty inside after being bitten. This should be it now, though. It was good, but we've seen it 100 times. And then we get Bobby's Open Challenge. We see several superstars that accept it. Lashley's Open Challenge for the WWE title, including Mason T-Bar, but the man who ended up answering the call was Kingston at the end. McIntyre came out of nowhere and hit Lashley with MVP's cane while the ref was distracted. Kingston rolled up Lashley for the win. I mean, don't tease us like this. I like the dynamic of Woods versus MVP, and the finish worked really, really well. It's actually a good Raw. I mean, compared to recent ones, this was fantastic. We move on to news, and we see a new commercial for the W Network has appeared to confirm W's running order for pay-per-views and network specials up until and including next year's WrestleMania. Money in the Bank will be next, followed by SummerSlam, its usual August slot, but on a Saturday in a stadium in Vegas for Clash of Champions in September. Extreme Rules have been penciled in for Hell in a Cell on the event schedule, while Survivor Series will take place in November before this year's close with tables, ladders and chairs. And of course, with 2021-2022's first four major WWE events will be the Rumble, Chamber, Fastlane and WrestleMania. And speaking of WWE saying they're going to return to live events for a 25-city tour beginning July 16th. We're going to have Smackdown and Toyota Center in Houston, Money in the Bank in the Dickies Arena in Fort Worth, and then Raw in the American Airlines Center in Dallas Smackdown. So it's huge for WWE coming back on the road. There's been rumours about new sets being built. And, of course, returning superstars, whether it be Becky Lynch or Brock Lesnar and others as well. So there's kind of real excitement. Of course, Edge as well is going to make a return. So there's hope there, everybody. We move on to SmackDown. It's the 21st of May. And all the champs are lined up in the entrance with their titles like their actual video game characters doing their pose. Deville out to inform us WWE live. Cruz babbled on about a match later. And from there, Deville is only for Paul Heyman to arrive, remind fans that the Tribal Chief is a champion, whereas the rest of the men and the women on stage are simply title holders. Bayley interrupted the proceedings and took exception to Natalya and Tamina as women tag champs, gave props to Cruz and Commander Aziz, and claimed Belair cheated to win Sunday at WrestleMania Backlash. The ESC made her way to the ring, coming face to face with the role model. Bayley backed off, allowing Baszler and Jax to attack from out of nowhere. Natalya and Tamina made the save, leading to the tag team match. And on the arena floor, Bayley delivered a Bayley to Bayley on Belair. This distracted Natalya enough for Baszler to apply the Kirifuda clutch and score the submission victory. Yes, after all that, not a bad match, but we need a faster start. And then backstage, Big E is ready. We get a nice Aleister Black promo about culling the herd. And Corbin out next, minus the crown. His opponent and kidnapper of the crown is, of course, Nakamura, who's had a fella playing the guitar. And if it's Rick Boogs, and if Boogs seems familiar, it might be because he won the 24/7 title twice during the season Old Spice commercials during WrestleMania weekend while going the name of the Night Panther. Boogs played Nakamura's theme for the distraction, allowing the babyface to counter Ender Games into a roll-up. Yes, another roll-up for the victory. Thoughts on this? Pat McAfee on commentary. He's had a lot of praise recently, but he needs to chill the fuck out, or at least wait to see stuff before losing his shit completely. I will say now, Nakamura will be WWE champion before he leaves the company. He's not got an ego, and he wants to succeed there as well. This was a nothing match, but it's kind of building towards a fight of the crown as well, maybe a potential king of the ring. And then we see Jimmy Uso wanting the Usos against Profits, and it's booked for next week. And then we see Universal Champ Roman Reigns making his way to the ring, accompanied by Jey Uso and Paul Heyman for a special champion parade. We get video package recapping his victory over Cesaro at WrestleMania Backlash. Reigns discusses humility and how he tries to teach to his sons. So instead of talking himself up, he's going to let his special counsel do it for him. And cut a glowing promo about Reigns and his success over last year before demanding Jimmy Uso come to the ring. Instead, Cesaro appeared and issued a challenge for a rematch at Hell in a Cell. For all Reigns could accept, or not, Seth Rollins jumped in from behind, leaving Cesaro to further nurse his arm injury. Rollins returns to the ringside area again, attacking Cesaro and leaving him lying with a stomp. He added a second driving Cesaro face first into the steel ramp. I mean, everybody loves hating WWE, but Reigns is the best thing in pro wrestling right now. Heyman listing off what Reigns has done since his return is incredible as well. And Rollins has become a little bit deranged. This is good stuff for him. Presumably Reigns just fucked off when Rollins and started beating the shit out Cesaro. Up next we get Dom Mysterio versus Bobby Roode. And the second generation Mysterio delivers 619 to Roode and finishing with a frog splash for the win. I'm kind of bored with this match. It's not a bad match, but Dom needs to prove himself. The storyline will continue. And then we see Jay not happy that a tag match has been made. He needs to tell Roman, and Reigns is so threatening backstage as well. I've no idea what Pat took before the show, but McAfee is out of his mind here. A nice promo from the Profits, and then the main event, a Fatal 4-Way match for the Intercontinental Championship. We see Big E caught in Zayn with the Uranagi and nearly earned a win over Cruz, but Commander Aziz pulled him out of the ring. Big E fended off a massive hill, but the lights dimmed and Aleister Black arrived, making his way through fog to blast Big E with a black mass. Cruz made the pin and scored to win. Black flashed an evil grin as the show went off the air. I mean, it was a banger of a main event. All brought it in this one. And Aleister Black returning, coming back. I mean, nice touch with the eye. But, you know, we'll see what happens with him there. Little did we know as the month would play out. We move on to Raw, the 24th of May. It's the MVP and Bobby open exactly the same way as they did last week. I thought it was different. I thought it was the same, but it was different ladies. I had to check myself. And they're not happy with Kofi. Thanks to Drew, and Drew comes out and then Kofi to rub it in, but Kofi didn't want his help. He wants a WWE shot. He wants Drew to step aside and talk about many a true word. Adam Pearce comes out and makes Drew versus Kofi number one contender. And this opening segment actually helped because you had a little bit of story there. We go straight into the match with Kofi and Drew, and after a third commercial break, we came back to see McIntyre hit a back suplex from the middle rope, and after several more near falls, MVP and Lashley interfered to cause a disqualification. This was 30 minutes of greatness. Raw should be more like this, but obviously they cut the legs out from under them with the finish. And Nikki Cross threw down a challenge to either Charlotte or Rhea Ripley. Since the Queen was already scheduled to face Asuka, Cross faced Ripley in a 2-minute beat the clock challenge. Ripley nailed her with a dropkick and beat it down in the corner. She seemed to forget about the time limit and ended up letting the clock run out, making Cross the winner. Cross did laps around the ring to celebrate. All Ripley could do was smile when she realised what happened. It was nice to see Cross, but Ripley is a little bit silly, really, forgetting about it. She out to laugh and then faced Asuka. The end came when Charlotte countered Asuka into a pinning combination for the win. So when it matters, Asuka loses. But they do have crazy chemistry. This was a really good match, but unfortunately Charlotte is a number one contender. We then see Cedric Alexander verbally blasting Shelton Benjamin before the match, saying his former tag team partner was near the end of his career and missed plenty of opportunity while he was in his prime with the world at his feet. They had a great bout with some cracking action before Alexander got a huge win and a fire promo. Again, this could and maybe should be on the pay-per-view. We see the RK Bro story told. It's good stuff, but weird Kofi is kind of in two storylines at this moment. Makes you think maybe the WWE Championship is not going to be the future story for him. We're leading to Woods versus Riddle, and they kept trading near falls and big moves until Riddle uncorked an RKO out of nowhere for the win. And yes, Dan, it does count because it is an RKO. This was a great match. The suplex from Woods was incredible, and the German off the second by Riddle, again, was fantastic stuff. I mean, forget Big E and Kofi. Let Woods have a proper single run. And credit to Riddle. I know he's a good wrestler, but he acts like a complete moron. AJ faced jobber number 2 next. We see Elias now AJ from behind and leap into the timekeeper's area and hides. Riker takes advantage and gets the pin to win. Yes, Jackson Riker pins AJ Styles. After the match, Omos comes down and catches Elias hiding. Elias and Riker run up the ramp, but Omos chases them. He then sends Elias flying into the LED board on the stage. He walks back down to the ring to check on others. Omos returns to the ring and helps AJ up. I mean, who did AJ piss off? Up next, Sheamus versus Humberto. The Celtic Warrior rolled him over a handful of tights for the win. After the match, Sheamus was about to lock in a cloverleaf on Carrillo, but Ricochet interfered and hit a moonsault followed by a springboard 450, taking out the US champ. And then we see Reginald cost Baszler a pin by distracting the ref at the wrong moment. She told him to leave as she walked up the ramp. Another explosion binds him. The distraction allowed Natalya to roll Baszler up for the victory. Yes, our main event was Natalya and Tamina versus Baszler and Jax for the Women's Tag Team Championship. After making sure he was right, Baszler told Reginald she was going to fight him next week. This was the main event. I mean, split happens next, I guess. Natalya and Baz look like partners with matching outfits. I'm just saying. Raw was okay, but quite an interesting main event there. And then departures, and after less than 2 months on the job, Adnan Virk is out as play-by-play announcer from WWE. They announced on the Tuesday that Virk and the company had mutually agreed to part ways. Virk replaced Todd Phillips as the voice of Raw on April 2nd, and we 7 episodes in addition to working the WrestleMania Backlash pay-per-view. In response to the announcement, Virk cited the extensive travel and other commitments as a reason for his departure. But don't worry, because WWE brought in UFC and Bellator former commentator Jimmy Smith to replace him as lead of Monday Night Raw. Michael Carlos praised him heavily and found him to be very versatile. And speaking of Todd Phillips, he has been released as well. Alright, we move on to Smackdown the 28th of May, and backstage, and Jimmy Uso talked to Roman Reigns about his and Jay's match with the Street Profits later in the show. He said they'll go on, win the tag titles, and put it next to the Tribal Chief's Universal Championship and rule SmackDown. Reigns said he was happy for him, but when Jimmy left, he planted seeds of doubt in Jay's head, asking if he was going to let his brother talk at McAfee. But after weathering everything thrown at her by the Princess of Staten Island, Blair was able to deliver the KOD for the pinfall victory. The champion saying she ain't nothing, while Blair celebrated her victory. So Mela is not a legitimate threat anymore. Bayley is so confident on commentary, and Blanca, as Michael Cole would say on commentary, this was okay. And what was better than okay, which was very strong, was the drip that Seth Rollins was wearing as he made his way to the ring. On the same day, he turned 35 years old to address Cesaro. And what started as a light-hearted promo complete with fake cheek in form. Cesaro's hospital bed after last week's brutal attack, serious and twisted. Rollins blamed both Cesaro and the W fans for the fate endured by the Swiss Superman a week earlier. His hands, he said, were clean. He's saying happy birthday to himself and prayed to the ring to end the segment. So after Crazy, this is the Seth we get. Move on to Owens versus Cruz. We see a stunner for Owens, but Commander Aziz broke up the pinwheel and Nigerian nail, drawing a disqualification. Another rush of a match, and can Owens come up short again? if he loses an Intercontinental title match to Cruz, I mean, he is probably one of the biggest losers in WWE. But after the match, Cameron's caught up with Roman Reigns and Jey Uso backstage, moments after Adam Pearce granted Jimmy's request for a tag match on next week's show. The head of the table asked Jey why he'd want that match when Reigns wants the best for him. He reiterated that he wants Jey to go back to having fans ask which one he is again, not where he has been. Main event Jey Uso while partnered with him. I mean, the thing is with this, I can't do it really credit, but this is a box set I could binge on, just backstage segments between the Usos and Roman Reigns, just so intense. And then Elisa played Nakamura to the ring for his match with Chad Gable. Nakamura stood a game Gable to pick up the win with a Kinshasa. Afterwards, Corbin berated Nakamura from the entrance ramp and claimed the crown as his again, saying it was anyone's but his. Boogs came from out of nowhere. Rock Corbin and Nakamura retrieved the crown before standing tall. So this is the thing now. Such a quick match as well. And then the main event, the Smackdown tag team titles, Mysterios versus the Dirty Dogs. Ray had been attacked before the match, much like Dom at the pay-per-view, so the young Padawan Mysterio went alone. Ray appeared just in time, still nursing his injuries, but provided a distraction that allowed Dominic to pick up the win. After the match, Usos hit the ring and talked trash to the victorious champions, all while Roman Reigns watched backstage, unhappy with the developments unfolding before him. This was a good match, but the Usos are a serious threat, and SmackDown was okay this week, more focused on the tag team division. So we start off 31st of May with the Raw, and hello Jimmy. Of course, Jimmy's taking over the commentary now. And we start with Miz TV, and yes, I did miss him. Morrison had his dripstick and garlic. The injury's not as bad as Force fault with the Miz, and they are trying to trademark the dripstick as well. You see Charlotte and Ripley were guests on the show. Cross made her way out with a huge smile on her face. Apologised for interrupting the Miz, who had a huge smile on his face too when he found out Cross was a big fan on the show. Cross got into it with Charlotte, led to him having a 2-minute challenge after the break. She lasted the full 2 minutes to win over Charlotte. Ripley applauded for ringside. I mean, Cross is the only one gaining from this. When she does have a full match, she will lose. Nice backstage with Priest and Riddle, made me actually chuckle. It was kind of, what would you say if Orton was your partner? You go, hey Randy. And then literally Randy showed up. Nice goatee as well from Orton, and leading to Orton versus Woods, and Orton picked up Woods and hit him with a Riddle's bro Derek finisher for the win, much like Riddle hit the RKO last week. Riddle marked out. Of course, this is a nice wink as well from Orton, and a really good match. Woods is incredibly talented and keeps having bangers on Monday Night Raw. And then we got Baszler versus Reginald. Yes, it's happening. Baszler grabbed him in the curve through the clutch, but broke it when an explosion went off. Reggie rolled her up for the upset victory. Yes, one of the most dominant women in NXT was pinned by Reginald. And Jimmy is not too bad on commentary at the moment. This match reminded me of Cody versus Ogogo, how bad it was. Mason T-Bar returned after being somewhere. They squashed the Lucha House Party, and then Sheamus versus Ricochet, and Carrillo came out to distract Sheamus, allowing Ricochet to run up for the pin. After the break, Sheamus was in the second match against Carrillo, as you were on Raw. Carrillo busted Sheamus open with a stiff forearm, but the Celtic Warrior did not let it slow him down. Ricochet returned the favour and distracted Sheamus, so Carrillo could get the pin. So both men have a win. I guess a triple threat match is coming, and good to see Ricochet on Raw. And then Naomi and Lana versus Mandy Rose and Dana Brooke. Little did we know it was Lana's last match, a bit like Ruby Riott on SmackDown last time out. Lana tried a few different pinning combinations on Rose before she was calling the hit with a net breaker. Brooke made a cover and got the pin. A tag champs watcher from ringside. Lana was always a trier. And after each man scored a win on the other in recent weeks, Shelton Benjamin said Alexander met for a rubber match this week. Alexander quickly hit a thumb to the eye before getting the pin. I can't defend this. And then we see Riker looking like he was in the chances. He and Elias made their way out to challenge Omos for the World Tag Team Champions. Elias saw Omos get in the ring. He jumped off the apron and let Riker deal with the giant himself. Omos decimated him as Elias watched from the ramp. Styles got the tag and finished Riker off with a phenomenal forearm to retain the titles. And like we said in WWE, split does happen. I mean, how are these guys still here? I don't know. And we see Baszler isn't happy that Alexa Bliss continue to mess with her. Of course, she's in charge of the fireworks, following a loss to Reginald. Baszler interrupted Alexa's Playhouse segment and assaulted Reginald. She then demanded a meeting with Bliss next week on Raw. Before Baszler walked out, she kneeled down and told Bliss to tell Lily that she's just a stupid doll. And then Kofi, a great promo for the main event. We get the number one contendership match after it was finished last week. Lashley's no longer there. Kofi versus Drew. We see a super future shock DDT, which was incredible, in a fantastic matchup. McIntyre hit the Claymore for the win and for the nice sequence. Kingston shook his hand in a show of respect. You know, what a main event. Raw is really, really struggling at the moment. And then we had the big news, WWE releases. And of course, WWE releasing Braun Strowman, Aleister Black, Ruby Riott, Lana, Santana Garrett and Buddy Murphy. It's incredible when you think at WrestleMania Backlash Braun Strowman wrestled. They brought back Aleister Black recently to feud with Big E. Ruby Riott had a match on Smackdown previously, and Lana had a match on Raw. And of course, Santana Garrett may be the one that's maybe not a big surprise there, and Buddy Murphy I've talked about it before the podcast, just, how much potential he had. Hopefully he can rebuild himself and maybe go to Japan or something like that and actually, start having bangers and prove to everybody how good he is. Move on to the June 4th Smackdown. Universal Champion Roman Reigns made his way to the ring, accompanied by special counsel Paul Heyman. The Tribal Chief warned Usos that while he changed his opinion on them challenging for the tag team titles, they better win. He reminded them that the entire family is watching. The enthusiastic Usos vowed to just do that. Brothers versus father and son coming up. This is not going to be too bad. This is tag teams mean something at the moment. And it is the SmackDown Tag Team titles, Mysterios versus Usos. We see the rookie competitor fended off both opponents, then caught a flying Jimmy with knees to the midsection and scored a controversial roll-up for a win. I mean, what a naff finish. As commentators caught it and blamed the ref. Backstage, Reigns berated the Usos for the loss of the model. They fixed it immediately by going to Adam Pearce or DeVille and getting another shot. We find out what happened later on the show with that. And then we see Caleb Braxton attempt to interview Seth Rollins, who avoided questions about Cesaro before abruptly ending things without giving an answer. And finally, the Street Profits, when Chad Gable approached, he offered their managerial assistance and hope that they would return it. They turned it down. But we have seen recently as well social media Street Profits with MVP, which might work. And then we Liv Morgan going it alone after the release of Ruby Riott. At face Carmella, the former champion, recovered and tapped Morgan out with a code of silence for demanding ring announcer Greg Hamilton proclaim her the most beautiful woman in the world. This is okay, but I think these are the only women left in the division. We see backstage Pearce and DeVille stop the Mysterios from leaving and forming a dual defend the tag titles for a second time. SmackDown Women's Champion Bianca Belair made her way to the ring and admitted that Bayley's laugh had been getting to her a little bit more every week. She started to disrespect and challenge her foe to a match at Hell in a Cell. Bayley accepted for laughing hysterically, a pitch taken over every screen in the Thunderdome, the ultimate taunt to the EST. This was a really good visual. And elsewhere, Street Profits attempted to talk sense into Otis, getting him to drop out of Gable's Alpha Academy. Instead, the big man attacked Dawkins and fought in Tool. And then Rick Boogs played Nakamura to the ring for a match with Corbin. The crown around the head of the babyface, the centerpiece of the feud. The sprint of the match came to a rather abrupt conclusion when Corbin scored a roll-up victory. Yes, another roll-up victory. And another match between Corbin and Nakamura. And afterwards, Boogs held Corbin up, allowing Nakamura to rock him with Kinshasa and regain the King of the Ring crown. And despite enduring a Nigerian nail and a sneak attack at the hands of Commander Aziz prize to the Intercontinental Championship opportunity, Kevin Owens was faced with the task of Roderick's attack on the injured rib. Miss Frog Splash for the pride of Nigeria allowed Owens to fight back and mount an offensive. The Intercontinental Champion cut him off, delivering his Death Bailey drive of the ring apron that allowed him to score the victory. Sami Zayn hit the ring after the match and blasted Owens with a hell of a kick, explaining, "I didn't just kick you, karma kicked you, Kevin." Owens has a Ziggler-like level of winning in big matches. And now the main event, the SmackDown Tag Team Championships. We see Dominic heading upstairs for the top rope splash and hopes of scoring a win. Reigns, though, appeared from out of nowhere and attacked both baby. Tribal Chief brutalised father and son combination, choking Dominic out with guillotine as the Usos watched. Jimmy implored his cousin to release a hold. Disgusted by Reigns' action, he left the ring, attempted to sway Jay to do the same. Reigns stopped the right-hand man, staring him down and preventing him from leaving. Reigns added more rights and a powerbomb to Dominic to end the show. The powerbomb outside the ring to Dominic was probably the most visual powerbomb we've seen in so long. They're not seeing the landing and then seeing the impact there. It's something that WWE so well, and maybe something AEW could have learned. Fell off the top of the cage. Alright, our penultimate Raw episode then, June 7th. We see RK Bro, the New Day, Viking Raiders, Mason T-Bar and Lynch Dorado at the top of the show for the Tag Team Battle Royal. Graham Metalik was out because of injury. An unannounced entry came out when Styles was cutting a promo on everyone. John Morrison said he would compete on behalf of his team, despite The Miz being injured as well. It was quite funny though, because The Miz, despite being injured, unfortunately went down in the wheelchair in slow motion, which actually did make me laugh as well. We see Mason T-Bar eliminated Johnny Drip Drip after a few seconds. Everyone teamed up to take out Mason T-Bar at the same time. Several eliminations happened in quick succession to leave the Viking Raiders as the winners. This is the tag division. It was okay, but would help if Raiders were on a winning run. Maybe this is the start. And then Elias told us why Jobber's Inc. broke up. And Riker attacked his hair with a razor, then attacked Elias. The match ended with a count out when Elias fucked off. And then we see a contract signing with no champ. The Scottish Warrior said he didn't need to wait for him and told a story about Robert the Bruce. The McIntyre prepared to sign MVP on the big screen with Lashley and his group of female admirers. The Almighty made McIntyre agree to stipulation stating he would never challenge Lashley for the W title again if he loses. The match is officially inside Hell in the Cell. And McIntyre ended the segment by cutting the table in half with his Claymore. Yes, he did that. And next, Sheamus with mask, because he did break his nose when Carrillo twatted him last week. Carrillo faced Ricochet for a number 1 contendership match. Carrillo hit a beautiful Spanish fly from the apron to the floor at one point. Fortunately, neither man could beat the 10 count back in the ring. This was good until the naff finish. And then backstage, MVP says, "Watch you celebrate at Kofi Mania. I get goosebumps to this day talking about it. Seeing with your sons in the ring, that's what triggered me to want to come back here, because finally WWE had a champion I could relate to and be proud of. And now look at you." This is trying to tell a story, and in Kofi's head. Up next, Cedric versus Jeff Hardy. Both get a video promo beforehand. Alexander hit a low drop kick and a suplex for a 2. Hardy dropped it with a twist of fate and hitting a swanton bomb for the win. So Jeff wins. I guess they're not burying him like everybody is saying, but they don't want to push Cedric then. This wasn't too bad. And then Nikki Cross chose Oscar as a tag team partner for a tag match against Rhea Ripley and Charlotte Flair. The rivals game one up at each other in unconventional mapping. They eventually started brawling, which ended with Charlotte hitting Ripley with natural selection. She watches Cross pinned her for the win. This was okay. Mansoor beat Gulak in a blink and you miss it match. And then we get Kingston versus Riddle. Kingston countered the RKO and Bro Derek for hitting Trouble in Paradise for the win. So Woods can't beat him, but at least Kingston can. And then Bliss and Lily were in the ring for their swing set to welcome Baszler to Alexa's playground. The Queen of Spades seemed unfazed and unimpressed. She knocked over a rocking horse for no reason. Before taking a seat next, asked Baszler to apologise to Lily for upsetting her. Baz said Bliss was delusional and blamed her for Reginald's accidents and losing the women's titles. The hostess denied having anything to do with the incidents and asked again for an apology. Baszler snatched Lily from her hand, saying she was sorry, she was just a stupid doll, and dropped it. Bliss decked her in the face and jumped on her. The Queen of Spades threw her off and stomped on Lily's face. The arena began to glitch out, so Baszler took the chance to leave while Bliss cradled a tall friend with a smile. Flames erupted all around the stage as the Queen of Spades fled. The camera followed her backstage where Shanae avoided a falling box and a piece of the set. The lights flickered as she looked for anywhere to hide. She locked herself in a room and stacked furniture in front of the door. She spotted Lily in the mirror behind her. When she turned it round, it was gone. She saw in the mirror again and broke it with a kick. What the fuck was this, eh? Well, we try and pick ourselves up from that and move on to Smackdown, the 11th of June. And we see a recap of the events surrounding Roman Reigns and, of course, the Mysterios. It then transitioned into Tribal Chief questioning whether Jimmy Uso knows the one thing he will not stand for, embarrassing the family. Jimmy hit the ring and cut a promo, calling Reigns jealous of the Usos and their desire to hold gold. He accused Reigns of intentionally getting them disqualified last week and vowed that by the end of the night he would be something he would not regret. He's not my brother. He doesn't just look like me. No one's going to confuse him for me. You better do something about this, Reigns warned Jay. Was epic. Like I say, like the Sopranos, like the West Ring, like whatever it was. Up next, tag team match, Big E and Kevin Owens versus Cruz and Zayn. The action broke down late with Big E and Cruz fighting on the floor, thus leaving Owens to drop Zayn with a stunner for the pinfall victory. After the match, Cruz challenged Big E and Owens to a tag team match on next week's show, this time with Aziz as his partner. The babyface accepted. This was a good match, and hopefully a fatal four-way will be fun, as we've seen before with them as well. Backstage, Reigns loved meeting Jimmy Uso in his locker room. And back inside the Thunderdome, the most beautiful woman in WWE, Carmella, battled Liv Morgan in a rematch from last week's show. Morgan win with Oblivion. This was short but sweet. And after the match, Carmella demanded Greg Hamilton announced she was still the most beautiful woman in WWE, as if it made up for that defeat. I mean, we should get a rubber match sooner rather than later, shouldn't we? And we see Seth Rollins joining Bayley for the most insufferable edition of the Ding Dong Hello show to date. The King and Drip laughed obnoxiously, alongside the former SmackDown Women's Champion, as a recap the last few weeks of television that saw both Bianca Belair and Cesaro on the receiving end of their mental and physical assaults. The talk show's signature doorbell rang. When Rollins opened the door, he was greeted by the return of Cesaro, who pummeled and stripped him, then sent him scurrying into the sanctuary of the locker room. Belair made her presence felt next and laughed Bayley's misfortune. This is a combo made in heaven. They could be bat villains with how good they are. Well, Seth and Cesaro both use the door as well, which always helps when it comes to that. We then see Gable v Ford. Ford is great. Otis attacks Dawkins backstage and Ford leads to a DQ, but missing his spot. Mean Otis. And then Naka beat Corbin in their weekly match. After the match, Rick Boogs sent Corbin over the commentary table, allowing Nakamura to retain possession of the King of the Ring crown. Fed up with being at the centre of the family rivalry between Reigns and brother Jimmy, Jey Uso stormed out of his locker room. Reigns berating Jimmy for not looking after his brother, treating him so poorly. Left with plenty to think about by his cousin. Jimmy took off after Jey. And back in the arena, Ray made his way to the ring, addressing Reigns' beating of his sons Dominic a week ago. Emotional Mysterio called Reigns a rat bastard who put his hands on his son Dominic. He also acknowledged Reigns as the man he wants to fight inside hell in a cell. Before Reigns could properly respond, Mysterio attacked him with a kendo stick. Mysterio teed off him, but eventually Reigns caught him with a Superman punch. And the head of the table set up for a spear. Dominic came out from out of nowhere with a kendo stick of his own. And then Tribal Chief sent Dominic over the top rope to the floor before Reigns lying next to his son as the show came to an end. And like I said, the powerbomb to the outside looked awesome. We saw it a couple of weeks previously with the camera angles involved in this one, where he goes over the ropes and it just looks like it absolutely kills him. Wow. And like I said, best thing in wrestling right now. And also WWE News, we hear that there's going to be tryouts in Las Vegas as well. So our last Raw, thankfully, the 14th of June, it's a go-home show. And Nia Jax approached Alexa Bliss at the top of the show to let her know that Baszler would face her at Hell in a Cell. He ended up agreeing to have her own match after Jax questioned why Bliss had been acting. Then we saw Nikki Cross make her entrance for a match against Charlotte. The Queen said in an interview she wanted this bout to prove she shouldn't have lost to Cross in a 2-minute challenge. She told Ripley. Charlotte didn't realise the ref was counting. Cross rolling to win by a count out. And as she ran around the ring to celebrate, Charlotte took her down with a boot to the face. She beat Cross until Ripley made the save with a rip tide. Thoughts on this on Bliss, it's good she's getting back in the ring finally, and the focus is on the women's division, good or bad. This was a pretty stale world to start. The match was nothing, and speaking of nothing matches, Morrison beat Jeff. I remember these two were going to be the future in 2007. We are still waiting for Johnny Drip Drip, and Morrison hit Starship Pain for the pin and a win. Alexander grabbed the mic and said he wanted to apologise to Hardy for not showing him the respect he deserved last week. He said he replayed the match from last week and saw how Hardy taunted him after the bout was over. Hardy offered him a rematch and said he would retire if Alexander beat him. Said missed his attempt to steal Hardy's swanton. Hardy nailed him with a twist of fate and a swanton for the win. Give Jeff time on Raw, and then people are going, why give Jeff the story? Sometimes you just can't win. The match didn't last long either. And speaking of matches that are not lasting long, Naomi was out to take on Eva Marie, but instead of Eva, she got the debuting Piper Niven as well. And Niven easily overpowered and destroyed Naomi in a 42 minutes. She slammed Naomi when Missionary could drive to get the pin, or it's a Piper driver, come on. Eva grabbed the mic and declared herself the winner. This is a squash, but Niven is ready for the main roster. In NXT UK, of course we know about Piper Niven, how good she is, but I don't mind her restarting a new character. Much like the Ringmaster's losses didn't matter for Stone Cold Steve Austin. The commentators do look a bit clueless, but still, it's not a bad thing. We get a nice argument backstage between Natalia and Tamina and Brooke and Rose. Looks versus names, and things break down. And now for something good, we get RK Bro versus New Day. And Wiz had Riddle on the top rope when we return from a second break. Kingston tagged in, they hit a combo suplex and splash for a near fall that's broken up by the Viper. New Day almost had Riddle pinned with a double stomp. Doomday survives. The match ended with Orton hitting Woods with an RKO when he went for the honor roll. I mean, the New Day are in my top 10 tag teams of all time, and weirdly enough, we will be tag teams at the start of next month, Dan and myself. This match was fantastic. On any other wrestling show, it would have been raved about. Because it was Raw, it kind of gets forgotten. We get Oscar versus Ripley 8 next, and after a series of counters, Ripley hit the Riptide for the win. Suit was over, Charlotte attacked Ripley out of nowhere. They brawled until the officials broke them up. Poor Oscar. This was good, but bloody Charlotte, eh? And then Bliss versus Jax. Bliss set up like The Undertaker to avoid leg drop. She climbed to the top turnbuckle, distracted her for a moment. She still managed to spike Jax with a DDT. She hit Twisted Bliss, but Reggie pulled her off. Jax caused a disqualification. She stared at Reginald until she seemed to be in a trance. When Jax got to her feet, she broke her stare, and he seemed to recover. This was weird. Is Alexa Bliss still Undertaker now? I'm not sure. We see a fire probe with Kofi on MVP saying he is not interested and he wants to do it for his family and what he wants to do. And then we see the former tag team partners, the Jobbers Inc., met for a rematch this week. As came out the gates hot with a running knee and a flurry of strikes. Riker rebounded after an Irish rip into the corner to hit a big clothesline. The fight spilled out the ring and Elias allowing himself to be counted out. In time. Awful. No way Riker works as a face. And now it is time for the main event. AJ Styles versus Drew McIntyre. Both men dished out a lot of punishment as McIntyre began to build momentum, but Lashley attacked him to cause a DQ. The Viking Raiders made a save while almost pulled Styles out of the ring. We return to a break to see, yes indeed, it is a tag match being made, a 6-man tag team match. So he's not at ringside because he's changing into his ring gear. McIntyre almost had a stare down, but the big man grabbed the Scottish Warrior by the throat, almost took out Eric and Ivar before him over the barricade, leaving McIntyre to fend for himself. But despite the disadvantage, McIntyre ended up getting a pin on Lashley to get the win. This was long. Good or bad, they were giving it time, and again a match turned into another one. 6-man was fun, but Raw is hard work, and usually Drew winning means he will lose at the pay-per-view. And before the pay-per-view, one more show, and it's Smackdown, June 18th. Well, Rey Mysterio kicked off Smackdown with the Unforgiven Steel structure, simply known as Hell, in a cell hanging ominously overhead and cast an ominous cloud on the night's proceeding. Legend better to relive the pain and agony suffered by his son Dominic a week ago. He called Reigns out, wanted to hear from the man himself, and he accepted Rey's challenge for the Hell in a Cell match later tonight. The head of the table emerged from his locker room and informed his special counsel Paul Heyman that he's trying to be diplomatic, but now he's going to do things his way. This was good stuff. Rey is actually the perfect babyface when you think about it, because you can't not feel sorry for him because of his size. Up next, Big E and Kevin Owens versus Apollo Crews and Commander Aziz. We see a spirited comeback by the prize fighter failing to fuel the babyface as a well-timed distraction by Zayn to Owens left KO prone with a Nigerian nail as Aziz and Crews picked up the win. So the IC title was taking a backseat to Owens versus Zayn. Why the hell was Aziz wearing a jacket to wrestle? This is fucking stupid. And it's funny, Aziz and Owens both being built, but fans will complain WWE will then lose face. This is what always happens. You get two new guys, and that's the kind of vicious circle. He didn't look great. Owens and Big E were the jobbers here, and Zayn winning light. For the 5th time in 6 weeks, Nakamura faced King Corbin, this time in a battle for the crown. Corbin grounded a pound in the artist, working him over with his strength and size advantage. Nakamura fought back low and put Corbin down with Kinshasa to win the match and the crown. After the match, a tearful Corbin sulked, while Nakamura celebrated Rick Boogs at the top of the Smackdowns. Not even Steamboat and Flair could have this many matches in this short space of time and keep it interesting. They do have chemistry though. Hopefully Nak can get a push and Corbin can get more. Up next, SmackDown Women's Champion Bianca Belair made her way to the ring for a promo ahead of a defence against Bayley on Sunday. After weeks of laughter and being told she's less than, Belair issued a challenge for a match inside Hell in a Cell. Bayley entered the Thunderdome, and after a brawl around ringside, she delivered a rose plant, laying the EST out and standing tall with a title to end the segment. I'm not a huge fan of this feud, but this was a nice brawl. Bayley seems great, and I like the way she seems to control the screens as well. Blair would definitely be a good heel, but we need more women on SmackDown. And backstage, Jim Uso approached Roman Reigns, admitted that they may not see eye to eye and everything. They are blood, family. The head of the table told his cousin to find brother Jay. Reigns is the best heel in wrestling, and this is the best story. Next, face we're going at lone for his scheduled match with Otis, and already injured Angelo Dawkins found himself beaten down by the Alpha Academy big man. Partner Chad Gable to refocus Otis. Partner with Gable to leave Dawkins lying following a lariat German suplex combination. Thoughts on this? Well, heel Otis with a clean shave. Credit to Gable though, nice heel, and Otis looking good as well. And then Seth Rollins interrupted an interview between Cesaro and Caleb Braxton, vowed to teach the Swiss Superman a lesson Sunday at Hell in a Cell. I really hope Cesaro finishes this. And then in the Thunderdome, Rey Mysterio made his way to the ring for the night's main event, a Universal Championship match with Roman Reigns inside the pay-per-view's namesake. The first time ever Hell in a Cell will be on SmackDown, and Roman Reigns is unbeaten inside the structure. This was Mysterio's very first time inside Satan's structure, but Mysterio, fueled by the hatred by Reigns' assault and domino, he dominated the opening minutes of the match. He blasted Reigns with a toolbox, wrapped a steel chair around his neck, and sent him into the cage. A missed spear sent the champion crashing through the table, but Reigns managed to sling Mysterio into the cage, turning the tie in his favour before he entered the commercial breaks. Reigns overwhelmed his opponent to a blind charge in the corner, allowed Rey to fight back in the match. He added a splash drive and a chair into the midsection of the champion. Reigns caught Mysterio a powerbomb, sending him out of the ring and into the sides of the steel cage, a la the devastating attack on Dominic from last week. Back in the ring, a cravat finished Mysterio as Reigns retained via submission. After the match, Tribal Chief tapped him out one more time and said Happy Father's Day to add insult as the show went off the air. I mean, Rey kicking his ass at the start was one of the funniest things I've seen, because I wasn't expecting it, but Reigns is the man. Really fun match. Yes, it should have been on a pay-per-view, but it helped SmackDown. You know, it's a strong show. You show what Roman Reigns does. He's a big deal. I know, they made Belair and Bayley head in the cell, so you've got that match. You've got Drew McIntyre versus Bobby Lashley in Hell in a Cell as well. Now we're getting Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn. So, the card won't be too bad, when we look at it. And, of course, we'll be reviewing the full show on Wednesday when we'll be joined by the Select Match Pod and, of course, Jaxie Scarlett as well. But don't forget, we're across all social media, Twitter at the WNR Podcast. I'm at the WNRJR. We're also on Facebook and Instagram, across all the good platforms. Send us an email, the WNR Podcast at gmail.com, and YouTube, the WNR Podcast, where all the latest clips and podcasts go at the same time, and you should be able to do SoundCloud on your phone, also Spotify and iTunes, but you can download, subscribe, rate and review there. So like I say, next episode is Hell in a Cell. And since Backlash, WWE repetitive matches, but I think with Raw and Smackdown, we will see a slight change, especially when the crowd comes back. I think that will be an injection that we need. I don't think the matches have been as bad as people have been making out, but like I said, when it's 3 hours, it seems to be a struggle. But I will say Raw, definitely SmackDown, but even Raw in parts has been more entertainment than Dynamite at this moment, which feels like a episode of Dark sometimes. So we'll see what happens when it comes to it. But like I said, really excited to have Jaxie and Select Match Pod on the podcast on Wednesday, where we'll bring you everything from Hell in a Cell. But until then, I've been James Rowlands. Thanks for listening, everybody, and bye.